CUAC is the oldest company in Canada in this area, as well as the only company that is kind of recognized by the Canadian government. So, Dani, how are you doing?
Good. It's good to be with you, Albert.
Why these feel like old days, right? We worked 30 years ago in like this, and now we have a chance to work again. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the company. 可唔可以介紹一下你間公司同埋你自己？
Well, the vision was to recognize that it's actually very difficult to make such decisions from abroad, and we decided to start operating overseas, specifically to have offices in different locales around the world to be able to guide individuals and often their parents or other well-wishers as to how to make their higher education choices, and really to see whether Canada should be on the short list at all or maybe even at the top of that short list. So since 1997, we've expanded and we have operations across Asia as well as into Africa and South America as well.
Danny 就話咧，佢間公司咧就1997年創立啦。咁啊，創立嘅時候個願景就希望能夠俾世界各地嘅年青人咧係對加拿大嘅中上教育係有啲認識啦，同埋可以幫助佢哋選擇加拿大嘅。咁因為咁咧，佢喺世界各地咧，喺亞洲唔同嘅地方，印度啦、巴基斯坦啦，同埋其他嘅亞洲嘅城市。甚至喺非洲咧都有呢個分行有個據點，咁咧能夠咧令到當地嘅年青人咧係有機會咧係認識到加拿大嘅專上學院啦，同埋可以幫助咧佢哋選擇咧係嚟加拿大咧讀書，或者考慮加拿大成為佢哋讀書嘅目標之一嘅。So, can you tell us a little bit about Canadians' higher education? You know, we have colleges, we have universities, and we have transfer program. Can you tell us a little bit more? 可唔可以同我哋介紹一下加拿大嘅專上教育啊？
Sure. Well, first, an important note about terminology. So if we look at the United States, the words in English, college and university, are pretty much interchangeable. When Americans say, I'm off to college, that usually actually means a university. In Canada, this is not the case at all. A college means one thing and a university means a different thing. So let me try and bring some clarity to that. The original concept was universities would offer degrees, bachelor level, master, doctoral level, and colleges would offer diplomas. Colleges would be more hands-on, more practical, and universities would be more theoretical. And the vision also included that colleges would teach a range of career pathways that universities would not, and vice versa. So until today, colleges, which are also known as polytechnics, will teach, for example, someone to be a paramedic or an engineering technologist. That is something one cannot go to university to do. So that's the basic structure. Now, it's also important to understand that there are transfer provisions between colleges and universities. So it is possible, for example, to start in business in a college and transfer the credits to a university. But by and large, if one is eligible to start in university in a business program, then that's usually the choice to take. But a great many fields in Canada, they're not available in universities. One has to go to a college or polytechnic to take them.
OK， 咁Dani 就同我哋講咧，就話咧嗰個名稱好緊要嘅 college 同埋 university 咧，喺美國嘅環境嚟講咧就係一樣嘅嚇，即係話喺美國嚟話我哋去 college， 即係話咧就上大學。咁但係加拿大嚟講咧 ，college 同 university 係完全都唔同嘅，特別係初嘅時候咧，college 咧佢哋係俾可以提供咧， 就一啲比較實際啲嘅，一啲同工作性有關嘅一啲課程啦。而大學咧就係比較一啲理論性嘅課程。咁好多課程，譬如護理啊，所謂叫 paramedic 啊呢啲咁嘅課程咧，就喺 college 先可以讀得到，大學咧就唔會用嘅。咁但係另一方面咧，大學咧就有學位啦，有碩士、博士嘅學位啦。咁呢啲課程咧，傳統上嚟講咧，喺 college 都讀唔到嘅。咁但係最近咧就開始有啲變化啦。第一就係 college 有啲 college 嘅學位啦。第二咧就係話咧，有啲 college 嘅課程咧都係可以將嗰啲學分咧轉去大學，變成咧係專讀大學嘅學位學士學位嘅學分嘅一部分嘅。咁呢個咧就係加拿大，特別喺加拿大專上學校嘅一個概況啦。咁或者我都問下我想問下阿 Dani 咧，就係話究竟係咪加拿大所有個學校都係公立嘅咧 ？So Dani, can you tell us whether all universities and colleges are public, and why is it important to us? Why is it important to students who want to come to Canada?
So when it comes to universities in particular, almost all are public. There are a number of very, very small universities which have a private status. But to give the audience an idea, I would say something like 99% of Canadians that go to university in particular, they're going to a public university. And it's important to understand the way higher education is organized in Canada, because it's a confederation of 10 provinces and 3 territories. So the higher education system is organized within each province or territory. There's no federal organization or licensing involved. So wherever a university or government college or polytechnic is established, it'll normally be under the province's Ministry of Colleges and Universities, and that status can be confirmed there. The reason it's important is it's a way to assure the public at large that there is quality control. In a system, for example, by contrast, like the United States, where it's a patch quilt of many different types of institutions, public, private, not-for-profit, all with varying missions, and thousands of them, it can be quite difficult to get a sense of what is the quality of the institution itself. There's a small number where it's pretty clear and pretty obvious, but in Canada, one doesn't really need to know much more than that it's government, that the institution receives government funding, to know that it has tremendous oversight and that the quality is regulated.
咁Dani 同我哋解釋就係話咧，加拿大咧絕大部分嘅學院嘅 college 同埋大學 university 咧都係公立嘅。咁呢個咧就除咗幾間細嘅私立學校之外咧，全部嘅學校咧都係公立嘅。咁個重要性喺邊度咧？個重要性就係話咧，啲學校咧就係政府資助嘅，因為佢係公立啊嘛。同埋咧，咁因為政府資助咧，所以佢對呢個每間學校嘅品質咧有個控制嘅。咁大學同埋專上學院嘅品質管制咧，就係省份嘅每一個省嘅自己本身嘅責任，就唔係聯邦。加拿大咧有10個省，有3個territory 地區，咁咧就每一個省同埋地區咧都有佢哋管制呢個專上學院同埋對專上學院撥款一個機制嘅。咁所以話咧，如果你作為一個學生咧，一個專上學院嘅學生咧，我哋就知道咧呢個學院咧，因為係政府嘅，第一佢係政府嘅資助啦。咁如果係私立學校咧，佢係政府嘅管制啦。咁所以我哋對加拿大嘅學校咧就會比較有信心啦。咁呢個同美國咧有唔同啊。美國咧就有幾千間學校嘅，咁當然有啲學校當然好出名啦，係咪？ 咁但係咧好多學校咧，因為佢哋係可能係公立，可能係私立，有可能係非牟利，佢哋個質量咧就比較參差一啲。咁對加拿大學校嚟講咧，因為我哋係政府資助同埋因為政府管制嘅話咧，所以咧嗰個質量個水平方面咧就有一定嘅保證。That's good. So now let's talk about why do people should consider Canada as a destination? Why would they should come to Canada to study? What can Canada offer from your perspective? And how would Canada be compared to other places such like United Kingdom or Australia and so on?
Yeah, well, there are a few, I think, prominent highlights when it comes to Canada. The first is the opportunities for international students to make a long-term pathway in terms of proceeding to a degree, for example, then working for a year or several years after that, applying for permanent residence, and proceeding to citizenship. Canada, if we go back 70, 100 years ago, it had a very choppy, uneven history when it came to how it received immigrants from around the world. But in the last 40 years, certainly, it's been quite extraordinary. No country has consistently taken 1% of its population on an annual basis. And the current population of Canada is 22% foreign born. So that's quite staggering as a raw number. So the first point I'd underline would be the very aggressive way in which Canada consistently, not just for 3 years or 5 years, but for decades now, has been embracing people from around the world and essentially rolling out the welcome mat to them. And international students are really high priority because they have the Canadian education which makes them most adaptable to Canada itself. So that's certainly one aspect. And another is the multicultural fabric of the society itself. So what's entailed by having a population that's 22% foreign born is certainly it's internationally dynamic, culturally dynamic, but it also means that for those that are global in orientation, that are worldly and sophisticated, they will find themselves in that type of environment. And I think it's really unparalleled. And I don't believe the experience in the UK or Australia or US is quite like this one when it comes to people coming in and very quickly fitting in. And I think that's why Canadian policies towards international students, as well as to other immigrants and refugees, has been so consistently strong for so long. And then it is an advanced, diverse economy, not quite like that of the United States, but not so far off because we have to compete with it as our neighbor. And I think one would find almost any career pathway available in Canada.
Well, 咁Dani 咧就同我哋講分析下點解要嚟加拿大讀書咧咁。咁佢話第一點咧就係加拿大咧就係一個從歷史嘅觀點嚟講咧係一個移民嘅國家。咁呢個係特別喺過去呢40年來咧就加拿大政府咧就係好注重即係話咧係邀請世界各地嘅人咧嚟加拿大移民嘅。咁我哋國家嘅目標咧就係每年咧就係希望有全國人口嘅1% 1%嘅移民數目。咁因為過去呢咁多年嘅努力咧，而家查實你睇翻加拿大嘅人口咧就係22%嘅人口咧都係海外出生嘅，即係話都係外邊移民入嚟嘅。 咁因為咁咧，第二點咧就係話，因為咁咧，我哋喺呢個係加拿大嘅文化係多元文化。咁嚟到咧，如果你喺外邊嚟到加拿大咧，就對於文化上嘅認同啊，同埋個日常嘅生活咧，就會多姿多彩。因為咧，你可以接觸到加拿大嘅本土嘅文化啦，全世界各地唔同嘅人族裔嚟到加拿大所為咗保持嘅文化啦，同埋你自己你自己原居地可能喺加拿大都有佢嘅文化，係一齊咧係融合埋一齊嘅。咁所以咧個生活咧會係多姿多彩啦。咁第三樣嘢咧就係話咧講到咧就係加拿大咧嚟加拿大讀書咧係加拿大個制度好全面啦。咁你由中學到大學到學士、碩士、博士都可以有選擇啦。咁同埋咧讀書嘅時候可以做嘢啦。讀完書之後又係要做嘢啦，同埋咧可以有個機會咧可以做成變成移民同埋做成公民嘅。咁最後咧就係講加拿大，加拿大事實上咧係一個比較先進嘅一個工業同埋商業嘅系統啦。咁當然我哋唔夠美國咁好，咁但係咧因為同我哋喺美國就係我哋嘅鄰居啊，咁我哋要同美國合作，同埋要同美國競爭嘅。咁所以我哋查實無論從工業啊、商業方面咧，我哋都比較先進一啲嘅啊。咁呢四樣嘢咧，就令到加拿大咧係一個即係比較適合其他國際嘅學生嚟加拿大讀書嘅理由。Okay, so you talk about the opportunity that is presented to foreign students in terms of jobs and immigration and so on. Can you talk a bit about how students can work when they're studying or after they finish studying? And can they get a job anywhere, or can they get a job in places of their choosing, or can they actually start a business? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a big driver of the appeal Canada has globally.
Excuse me, I forgot to translate the question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, sorry about that. 咁我頭先係想問嘅，實就係想問下 Dani 就話，既然即係加拿大嗰個環境咧係提供咗國際學生咁多嘅機會，咁我想問下 Dani 咧就係話，究竟喺工作方面，無論係在學嘅時候嘅工作，或者讀完書之後嘅工作嘅機會啦，同埋係咪做生意嘅機會啦？我想阿 Dani 咧喺呢方面同我哋介紹一下嘅。Okay, so sorry.
Yeah, sure. So this is a big part of the attraction for international students. A study permit comes with a work permit. So from the time someone arrives, one can be working part-time on campus or off campus as one wishes. During summer recess, if there is a summer recess in the program, that's commonly May to August, then an individual can work full-time and essentially work unlimited hours in that period. Even as a student, right from the start, one can start a business. It needs to be part-time while in full-time study, but that's very possible. And Canada is one of the easier countries in which to start a business. It's not a complicated process to, for example, incorporate a company and be off and running. Now, when the degree or diploma is finished, a work permit will be issued if one applies with proof of it being finished within 180 days of graduation. So how long the work permit is depends on how long the academic program is. But to give an idea to the audience, if the program is 2 years or more, 2 years is generally four-month semesters, then a work permit of 3 years will be issued. And that's called a post-graduation work permit, or PGWP. And then apart from that, different provinces have their own incentives or sweeteners to try and attract students to one or another province in particular. So for example, the province of Nova Scotia in the very east of Canada has a Nova Scotia immigration program that it negotiated with the federal government to offer further attractions for different categories of international students so that they can get permanent resident status, sometimes even before they graduate.
OK， 咁啊 ，Dani 就同我哋講，佢話即係學生咧當啲學生國際學生申請嚟加拿大，佢攞到個 student permit， 即係攞到個學生簽證之後咧，個學生簽證咧就會跟住個學生簽證咧就有一個工作嘅簽證。咁即係話咧，佢一嚟到加拿大咧，佢就可以開始做呢個 part time work， 即係做兼職嘅工作。咁啊，兼職咧通常嚟講咧就係20個鐘每一個禮拜。咁除咗佢讀書嘅時候兼職之外咧，佢個放假，譬如暑假，通常咧暑假係由5月到8月啦。暑假嘅期間咧，在學嘅學生咧，就當然佢可以做全職嘅，因為佢唔使上堂啊嘛。咁幾多個鐘咧都冇，即係冇關係啦。咁所以工作嘅機會咧，實習嘅機會咧，實上係相當多嘅。甚至咧佢講到咧就係話學生咧可以創業都得嘅，因為加拿大創業咧係比較容易啊，即係你想攞個公司嘅牌照嚟開間公司創業咧係好容易啊。咁呢個咧我自己個人嘅經驗就係話幾百蚊嘅啫，咁你登記，咁你哋就可以開工啦就可以開公司當然啦，你個公司當然你喺讀書嘅時候你係要兼職去做啦，咁但係讀完書或者放假嘅時候咧，你就可以全職做啦。咁讀完書之後咧，就180日之內咧，你就可以向政府申請一個工作證，叫做PGWP。呢個咧就係 Postgraduate Work Permit。咁呢個 Work Permit 咧，呢個工作證咧，就要視乎你讀呢個課程有幾耐。譬如呢個課程係2年，即係4個學期以上嘅話咧，你就可以攞3年嘅工作證。即係話咧，畢完業之後，你有3年嘅時間咧，喺加拿大咧係做嘢。咁你做嘢做一輪嘢之後咧，你就可以申請移民。咁你喺加拿大有咁多個地方，你當然可以選擇你去工作嘅地方啦。好多省份咧就為咗希望能夠爭取啲海外學生畢業嘅海外學生，因為嗰啲學生係最好嘅因為啱啱佢受過加拿大嘅教育，能夠適應加拿大。咁咧佢就會有好多嘅優惠嘅計劃咧，係吸引啲學生去佢哋嘅省嗰度咧工作同埋移民嘅，譬如Nova Scotia 啦，我哋其中一個學校嘅所在點喺加拿大嘅東邊咧，佢有特別嘅計劃移民同埋工作計劃係俾啲畢業嘅學生，咁個畢業咗學生就可以咧做嘢咧，再申請移民，甚至咧未開始工作咧都可以申請到移民嘅。咁所以咧呢樣嘢咧對好多海外嘅學生，如果佢想嚟加拿大，除咗讀書之外，仲希望能夠有長期居留咧，就係一個好吸引嘅地方。OK， 咁我而家想問下 Dani 咧，就係咁如果我有家庭咁點咧即係我可唔可以帶埋我個配偶，或者甚至我有細路嘅話，可唔可以帶埋佢哋嚟讀書嘅咧？咁 So Dani, I would like to ask you a question about family, right? So some of the people who is interested in this program has a family. They may have a spouse, and they may have even small children. Could they be brought with the applicant to Canada when they're studying in Canada? And how does it work?
Yes. There's a procedure either at the time of application or after arrival for the spouse to apply for a work permit. And the spouse then has all the freedom to work as many hours as he or she would like while the other spouse is a student.
Okay, so how about the children? What would happen to the children? Suppose the applicant has 6 years old, right? Would the children be able to come with the parents and go to school in Canada?
Yes, if the children are under 22, they can study from kindergarten to grade 12, or even go on to university or college. And there are special procedures for that as well. In some situations, the children will need a special study permit, but that's not complicated to get. It's very straightforward, and Canada does encourage and enable families to stay together.
So the cutoff age again for the children is 21?
Under 22, if the child has been dependent the whole time.
Okay, so 或者我喺度即係同講頭先Dani 講俾我聽，呢個係好有興趣嘅，因為咧，如果作為一個申請人，你攞到加拿大嗰個 study permit 呢個學生護照之後咧，如果你有配偶嘅話咧，你就可以帶埋個配偶嚟加拿大啦。咁嚟到你個配偶嚟到加拿大之後咧，佢就可以申請一個工作證。呢個工作證咧係冇限制嘅，即係你個先生或者你個太太咧。你讀書嘅時候咧，佢可以全職咁嘅工作，佢個工作幾多，個工作量幾大咧，係完全冇限制嘅。咁你細路仔係點咧？如果你有細路仔咧，咁你個細路仔咧都可以跟埋你嚟加拿大。咁呢個細路仔咧，22歲，如果呢個細路仔仲係要你照顧嘅話咧，佢22歲以下嘅細路仔可以跟埋嚟加拿大咧，咁佢咧就可以喺度讀書啦。咁有啲情況咧，佢可能要申請一個讀書證件，但係呢個係好方便嘅。阿 Dani 話咧，呢個係好容易係解決得到嘅。So this is actually very attractive. So I'm going to ask another question about the work permit. 嗱，我而家咧就想問一問阿 Dani 咧，關於嗰個即係 post degree work permit 呢個 postgraduate work permit 呢樣嘢咧係點樣運作嘅？So Dani, just can you tell us a little bit more about the post-graduation work permit? Why is it important for people to know about?
The post-graduation work permit, or PGWP, it was designed really for two reasons, which one can see in our regulations. The first was to attract students by the proposition of being able to apply their studies through work experience in Canada. And as I mentioned, work permit is generally 3 years in length if the individual studied at least 2 years in a degree or diploma. The second purpose was to leverage the work experience into an application for permanent residence. So the PGWP is expressly tied to the permanent resident process that follows. And that's the federal program I'm talking about. But as I indicated, using just Nova Scotia as one example, there are many others. There are also provincial pathways that are tied in the same way from the studies to the post-graduation work permit to permanent residence.
So before I actually translate it, maybe I should have a follow-up question. So yeah. I assume that the work that a graduate would do, they are fully paid, right? They just like a regular worker, right? There's no limitation. They would get fully compensated just like any other Canadian workers.
Fully compensated. And really, it's another attraction in Canada because the percentage of people from abroad working here is so high. Employers really don't even pay much attention to what is the status of the individual. And it's also a big attraction that employers know that international students have pathways to stay. So they're worth investing. They are worth investing in. So in fact, yes, the pay is absolutely the same.
OK， 咁Dani 咧就同我哋講呢個postgraduate 嘅 work permit 咧，呢個 PGWP 咧，呢個工作證咧，其實有兩個目的嘅。第一個目的嘅就係希望咧，國際學生佢畢業之後咧，佢有個機會咧就係實習即係將佢學以致用咁等佢有3年嘅機會咧。喺加拿大咧係有啲工作嘅經驗嘅。咁第二個嘅目的咧就係話咧呢個係從聯邦政府嘅觀念嚟講咧， 就係俾一個機會俾呢個學生畢業咗嘅學生咧，一個機會咧可以申請移民嘅一個途徑嚟㗎。咁好似頭先我哋講咧，就係話除咗聯邦嘅呢個 program 之外咧，好多唔同嘅省份，譬如 Nova Scotia 啊、Ontario 啊，或者係 BC 省咧，佢哋都有唔同嘅省嘅，亦都有省嘅計劃咧，係俾呢啲咁嘅畢業咗能夠工作嘅學生咧，係變成移民嘅。咁我就繼續問阿 Dani， 咁究竟畢咗業用呢個工作證讀書做工作嘅時候，工作嘅環境係點啊？係咪即係話一樣係有薪酬啊、待遇啊、工作嘅環境方面係咪同加拿大本地人一樣咧？咁啊 Dani 就話咧，梗係一樣啦，係咪？因為僱主都知道咧，第一呢個學生佢上去工作以後，或者佢哋希望藉着呢個機會成為呢個移民嘅一個門檻，咁所以咧對呢啲咁嘅學生咧都比較畢業嘅學生都有歡迎，咁同埋佢知道咧呢啲學生咧一定工作起上嚟咧，佢哋會更加有勁更加勤力，咁所以咧都好歡迎。So Dani, I'm going to ask you this question, but let me just say in Chinese, and I'm going to ask you this question. 咁我想問呢個咁嘅計劃，我哋講咗好多關於移民嘅計劃啦。咁可以成為移民嘅計劃。我想問下，轉一轉個方向咧，就係問下究竟咁嚟加拿大讀書嗰個費用係咪係幾高嘅咧？同其他嘅地方，譬如其他國家，澳洲啊、英國個比較上嚟講又係點咧？So Dani, what I'd like to find out from you, we talk a lot about work and immigration and study. Now let's just turn our attention to how much it's costing, how much it's going to cost us as a foreign student to study in Canada. Are they comparable to other countries such as UK or Australia? Can you give us an overview of the cost structure?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to make a distinction between bachelor level programs and professional master programs. Those are our two priorities in our work at CUAC. We don't help with thesis-based programs, for example. In the case of bachelor programs, the costs are fixed for Canadians and permanent residents, and they're rather low. A year bachelor study in Canada for Canadians is usually around 8,000 Canadian dollars. But for international students, there's no regulation around it. So if we compare it to other countries, it can be comparably high, such as what University of Toronto or University of British Columbia might charge, where a year of bachelor study could be 45,000, 50,000 Canadian dollars or more. Or one can go and get comparable quality at a smaller institution where indeed the attention might be quite terrific and the cost might be more in line with, say, 20,000 Canadian dollars a year. So that's on the bachelor side. And in those cases, in the last instance, the example I gave, I mean, that's quite great. That is a real bargain compared to what one might find in the UK, US, or Australia. When it comes to master programs, there tends less to be any differential as between international students and Canadian students. Some programs it is the case, some it's not. It's different from in the bachelor level where virtually all programs have a differential fee. So one would have to check program by program what is the applicable fee structure. But to give an idea, an MBA in Canada could cost for a 2-year MBA anywhere from 40,000 Canadian to well over 100,000 Canadian.
Dani 就話咧，我哋 CUAC 咧就工作咧主要都係針對學士學位啦， 同埋一般嘅碩士學位咁博士學位同埋要寫論文嘅碩士學位咧，我哋就比較少啲做嘅。咁如果從學士學位嘅觀點嚟講咧，就加拿大其實個學費咧，如果你係加拿大嘅移民或者公民咧，佢就好低嘅，因為只係可能係8000蚊一個月啦，加幣而家講加幣，我所講嘅冚唪唥都係加幣。咁但係咧，如果你係海外學生嘅話咧，咁咧就變咗咧，唔同個學校咧，佢個收費咧就唔同啦，因為呢個咧就係冇標準嘅。譬如咧多倫多大學或者係BC 省大學呢啲最出名嘅學校咧，佢個收費可能學士學位咧，可能要收到4萬幾5萬蚊加幣一年嘅嚇。咁但係如果你去啲細啲嘅學校，譬如我哋有所代表嘅聖 Mary 咧嚇，佢咧個學費可能係2萬蚊加幣一年嘅。咁同埋咧，仲有一個好處，實細嘅學校佢哋嗰個學生個學習嘅環境咧，事實上係可能比你大嘅學校更加好，因為細班啊嘛，啲先生嘅照顧咧就會更加好嘅。咁所以咧就因為每間學校咧公立咧，所以咧你可能揀學校咧就唔一定要係揀最出名嘅，因為最出名嘅可能佢收費咧會特別貴。咁碩士方面咧就嗰個分別，即係本地學生同埋呢個海外學生嘅收費個分別咧，就唔係好多時候都唔會好大嘅分別嘅。咁咧就要逐個 program 去睇啦。咁譬如舉個例嘅 MBA 咁MBA 咧就無論係海外學生或者本地學生咧，有啲學校收4萬幾，有啲學校咧可能收到10萬蚊加幣一年都唔出奇嘅。咁但係咧其他嘅碩士課程咧個收費咧就會可能低好多。咁你就要睇下你讀嘅專業係乜嘢啦，喺邊度讀。咁但係咧就係好似我頭先講就係話咧，本地同海外學生嘅收費標準咧，對於碩士課程嚟講咧就比較低好多啦。跟住咧，我想問一個問題，呢個問題咧就係同我哋頭先講嘅問題咧有啲連結性，就係話我哋點樣選擇加拿大嘅大學啦，譬如當然從學費方面嚟講啦，咁從名譽嘅觀點嚟講，有冇分別咧？加拿大係咪學校有冇一個ranking 嘅咧？咁我就用英文問Dani。So in terms of choosing university, Dani, is there a ranking system among all the universities, or how would people go about choosing a university?
Yeah, well, there's no official ranking, just to make that clear. There are some commercial products out there, a magazine ranking or a newspaper ranking. In my view, these are not to be relied upon for making decisions whatsoever. The way in which a Canadian makes a decision, Canadians being familiar with our system, is we tend to choose especially the environment that we find would be suitable, whether it's being near to home or in fact far from home, whether it's near a mountain, a lake, or an ocean, whether we prefer a small environment where we can commute very easily if we're living on campus and just walk in 10 minutes, or a big metropolitan area if we want to be living, a faster paced nightlife existence. That is how we tend to guide ourselves, as well as, of course, an institution that has the program or programs that we're interested in. So that's the starting point, to make sure it has the right programs, and then we choose according to our personal taste. Because given what I explained before, by and large, quality is not an issue. There are some exceptions, but as a general proposition, the quality part is pretty solid.
So Dani 就同我哋解釋，第一咧，加拿大嘅公立大學咧就冇 ranking 嘅嚇，即係冇一個排名嘅。有啲咧就係雜誌啊，有 McLean 嘅雜誌咧就有個排名，但係咧呢啲排名咧就都係好主觀嘅。咁好似佢頭先講咧，加拿大人本身咧嚇，即係本地嘅學生，佢哋揀學校咧就好多時候就睇下。係咪近屋企啦嚇？有啲就專登揀啲近屋企嘅，有啲係專登揀離屋企好遠嘅，有啲咧就中意去睇海洋嚇，近海啲嘅嚇，或者咧有啲會揀啲細啲嘅學校，因為咧佢中意咧就容易出入。有啲就會揀大城市，因為咧大城市嗰個生活咧就比較多姿多彩。咁咪好似佢頭先講咧，佢就話咧就因為加拿大全部學校差唔多都係公立學校咧。佢嗰個水平咧就係有保證，咁所以咧因為咁咧，其實我哋要揀學校咧，第一我哋要揀啲即係對有我哋想讀嘅課程嘅學校啦。第二咧都應該揀一啲咧，即係話對我哋適合嘅學校啦。細嘅學校咧，唔係一定唔好嘅，因為細個學校因為佢哋係小班啦嚇，對學生嘅照顧啦，可能比大學校更加好嘅。咁咪睇佢個問題咧，就係你適唔適合嘅啫。因為佢哋嘅水平咧，同大學校比較嚟講咧，係有一定嘅保證嘅。OK， 咁我想問最後咧，我想問時間差唔多，我想問Dani 一個問題，就係關究竟CUAC 我哋加拿大大學申請中心點樣可以幫到一般嘅學生係嚟加拿大讀書嘅咧？咁 So Dani, a final question I have is, how can CUAC help in the application process? So now that we talk a lot about coming to Canada, the advantage of coming to Canada, what can we do after we graduate, that kind of thing. What can you do to help? What can us, the company, help us?
Yeah, that's a key element. There are two real core aspects to that. The first is counseling, giving guidance on entry-level questions like, is Canada the right country, first of all? It may not be, and to make a huge decision like that, it has to be an informed one, and it has to be one where we can point the student or family to online resources where the information can be checked and there can be confidence in the information that we're offering. So is Canada the right country? And then there's what is the right program, and then where to study. So if Canada is the right country or on the short list, there are still key questions in terms of what to study and where to study. The other core element is, if we've gotten to that point where there's going to be one or more applications, then we have a lot of inside information on how to evaluate, where to apply, and to, in fact, prepare the application so it's done properly. So I want to give a couple of examples in that regard. First of all, it's very common that online admission standards post minimum standards, and individuals get confused by that because they look at those standards and they think, well, I meet those standards, so I guess I'll be admitted. And that is generally not the case. The institution or specific program, this is particularly the case with master programs, they're only posting online what is the standard you should have so that you don't waste your time completely. But we're often able to know what the real standards are and to tell people not to waste their time, even though they may meet the minimum standards online. So that is one example of what we're able to do to help individuals. And another can be that programs may well be closed. This is often the case for master programs. At the time the student is applying, she has no idea, because it's not posted or she can't find where it's posted, that the program is actually closed. So there are many, many examples of this kind in which our inside information allows us to guide students more properly. And just to give a very fresh example from a webinar I was in a couple of days ago with a very senior Canadian government official, and she stressed not to rely on online information for how long a study permit would be processed. So that is something we commonly find with universities as well, that the online information is either not completely clear to the individual reading it or simply out of date.
OK， 咁啊 Dani 咧就話咧，我哋嘅工作咧，其實係有幾方面嘅，有兩方面最主要。第一方面咧就係 counselling， 即係話咧係輔導啊。咁啊如果一個海外嘅學生佢哋想嚟到加拿大，咁我哋會即係同佢分析一下，究竟加拿大係咪佢嘅理想嘅目標咧嚇？如果係嘅話，咁佢應該去讀啲咩課程，同埋去邊度申請讀啊？咁呢個係當然係好重要啦嚇。咁因為我哋對加拿大個學校個制度嘅料同埋個社會嘅了解咧，咁呢方面咧，我諗我哋可以即係幫到大家嘅。咁但係第二方面咧就係個申請嘅過程啦。咁佢舉咗兩個例子，因為我哋好多時候咧，我哋同我哋代表個學校咧係有個好密切嘅聯絡，咁所以咧我哋對學校好多內幕嘅資料咧係外界或者你網上咧睇唔到嘅。譬如你有啲碩士嘅課程或者學士嘅課程，佢有個係 minimum requirement 一個基本嘅要求啊。咁但係呢個基本要求唔係代表咗你有嘅話咧就可以收㗎啦嚇。你可能好多時候咧，佢實際上個申請人咧，佢要達到個水平咧，係比呢個最低標準要高好多咁。但係網上你睇唔到㗎嚇。咁但係因為我哋有內幕嘅資料咧，咁我就可以話俾啲申請人聽，即係話究竟實際上個要求係去到邊度啦。咁另外一方面咧，亦都可以好多時候咧學校申請你唔知道佢幾時要等幾耐啊。咁但係因為我哋同學校即係一齊工作啊，好多時候咧我哋會知道嗰個時間上嘅需要啊，咁好多方面嘅。咁佢舉咗個例咧，就係話佢前幾日同一個加拿大一個好高級嘅官員見面開會嘅時候咧，就個官員就特別指出佢話，譬如你網上話究竟要申請一個學生嘅簽證要幾耐咧？咁呢個唔係咁準確嘅，因為好多時候咧，因為情況唔同咧，個時間嘅改變，嗰個時間會有改變。咁申請學校都係一樣㗎。咁因為我哋有啲比較即係內幕啲嘅消息咧，因為我哋同學校一路好緊密嘅合作咧，喺呢方面咧都可以即係幫到學生，即係申請嘅時候咧係大家知唔知道？喂，係咪可能太遲啦？已經嗰個人已經收晒學生啦。你可能應該係唔好嘥時間啦，或者咧你等嘅時候，你知道係值得去等落去嘅。OK，so 今次咧我仲有一個問題，有一個係由 audience 嚟嘅問題，即係有人聽眾嘅問題，我想問一問Dani 嘅，就係話咧我有個女咧就係有讀緊一個 associate degree 喺香港啊，就係香港一間學校同一間澳洲大學合作嘅一個 associate degree， 一個副學士嘅學位。咁如果佢想轉去加拿大得唔得咧？咁嗰啲學分承認嘅方面係點樣咧？咁 So I have a question from the audience. This is our final question. It says my daughter is studying for an associate degree, which is co-organized by a local university and an Australia university. Can she transfer to a university in Canada to complete her degree?
As a general proposition, yes. I would say in the case of engineering, that tends to be the program for which it's most difficult and may not be possible. But for most other degrees, it's a question of are the courses taken comparable to what would be taken in the Canadian degree? And were the grades in each course sufficient to justify the transfer of the credits? And I would say most Canadian universities will be quite open to transferring up to 2 years of credits towards a 4-year bachelor degree.
咁就 Dani 就話咧，一般性因為呢個問題好難答嘅，要每一個課程唔同啊。咁一般性嚟講咧，工程如果係讀工程咧就比較難啲咁多嘅。但係其他嘅科目咧，實際上咧就好多時候都會加拿大嘅大學咧就會都會考慮。通常嚟講咧，加拿大咧會即係話接受差唔多2年up to 2 years， 差唔多到2年嘅相關嘅課程咧，都會接受佢個轉移呢個 transfer 嘅。咁你就睇下你喺香港或者喺其他地方讀個課程同加拿大嘅大學申請嘅課程咧，個相關課程咧係咪有吻合啦？咁呢個第一樣嘢啦。第二樣嘢要睇嘅咧就係你每一科個成績啦。如果你個成績係唔係好差嘅話咧，你去轉呢個學分咧個可能性咧亦都係相當高嘅。OK， 咁喺呢度咧，我想代表大家係多謝阿 Dani 啊。咁希望咧我哋以後有機會咧再揾阿 Dani 翻嚟同我哋講下申請嚟加拿大讀學校嘅其他啲比較深入啲嘅問題。So I like to thank Dani on behalf of our audience for his time and his wisdom about studying in Canada, and hope that I would bring you back again to talk about various aspects of studying in Canada. So 咁喺呢度咧，我同大家講再見，希望大家以後咧有機會咧同大家再分享關於嚟到加拿大嘅讀書嘅一啲問題嘅。多謝各位。Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks so much.